My name's Eric, and I'm here because I need to vent. My world turned upside down a few weeks ago, and I'm still trying to make sense of it. I never thought I'd end up being one of those guys sharing a story like this, but here we are. I'm 34, and I've been married to my wife, Megan, for 6 years. We met through mutual friends, and from the start, she had this energy about her. Confident, funny, and a little wild. She was the kind of woman who made you feel lucky just to be standing next to her. Or so I thought. We had what I believed was a strong relationship. Sure, Megan could be intense. She had this way of turning every disagreement into a battle, but I figured every marriage had its quirks. Plus, she was great with people, always the life of the party. My best friend, Adam, used to joke that she was the one keeping me socially alive. Adam's been my best friend since college. We were inseparable back in the day, beer pong champions, road trip partners, and, most importantly, always there for each other. He was like a brother to me. Megan and Adam got along well, which I thought was perfect. It felt like we were this tight-knit group. But lately, things with Megan had felt off. She started being more dismissive of me, snapping at small things. She was constantly on her phone, smiling at messages but never sharing what they were about. When I'd ask, she'd roll her eyes and say, "It's just work stuff, Eric. Relax." At first, I convinced myself it was all in my head. She'd always been independent, and I didn't want to be the paranoid husband. But then there were other little things, like how she started going out with friends more often, always dressed to the nines. And then there was Adam. He started pulling away from me. He wasn't around as much, and when we did hang out, he seemed distracted, dodging questions about his life. I figured he was just busy with work or dating, but it felt weird. Something wasn't right, and I couldn't ignore the sinking feeling in my gut anymore. I just didn't know how bad it was going to get. It all started to unravel one Friday night. Megan told me she was going out for a girls' night with her friends. She looked amazing, wearing a dress I'd never seen before, and perfume so strong it lingered in the hallway after she left. I wasn't in the mood to sit at home, so I called Adam. Normally, we'd hit up a bar or play a few rounds of Call of Duty, but he didn't answer. I texted him, and he replied an hour later. "Can't tonight, man. Busy." That was odd. Adam never said no to hanging out unless he had a date, and even then, he usually told me about it. As I sat there alone, something clicked in my head. I don't know what it was. Maybe Megan's sudden increase in girls' nights, or Adam's weird behavior, but I decided to do something I'd never done before. I checked Megan's location. She'd left her phone's location sharing on after we used it for directions during a road trip months ago. I opened the app, expecting her to be at a downtown bar with her friends. But she wasn't. She was at Adam's apartment. My stomach dropped. At first, I told myself there had to be an explanation. Maybe she stopped by to pick something up, or maybe Adam had invited some of Megan's friends over. I wanted to believe that so badly, but the doubt gnawed at me. I grabbed my keys, got in my car, and drove to Adam's place. His apartment was only 10 minutes away, but it felt like the longest drive of my life. When I got there, I parked across the street, trying to figure out what I was going to do. I didn't want to overreact or look like a lunatic. But as I sat there, my headlights illuminated something that made my blood boil. Megan's car, parked in Adam's driveway. My hands were shaking as I walked up to his front door. I told myself I'd knock, that I'd confront them like an adult. But when I got there, I heard voices inside, her voice, his voice, followed by laughter. And then, I heard something I'll never forget. Megan's laugh turned into a soft moan, and Adam's voice murmured something I couldn't make out. I didn't need to knock. I didn't need to go inside. I already knew. I walked back to my car in a daze, my heart pounding and my mind racing. My wife and my best friend. Couldn't believe it. But I wasn't going to let it end there. They had no idea what was coming next. I drove home that night in a storm of emotions. Anger, betrayal, humiliation. But one feeling stood out above the rest. Determination. I wasn't just going to sit there and let them get away with this. I needed a plan. The next morning, Megan came home acting like everything was fine. She walked into the kitchen, humming to herself, still wearing the dress from the night before. She kissed me on the cheek, like I hadn't heard her with Adam less than 12 hours ago. "How was your night?" she asked, pouring herself coffee. I forced a smile. "Oh, just hung out at home." "How was girls' night?" She hesitated for a fraction of a second before answering. "It was fun. We just went to a couple of bars downtown. The usual." I nodded, biting back the urge to explode right there. Instead, I played it cool. "That's great. I'm glad you had fun." Over the next few days, I acted like everything was normal. Megan didn't suspect a thing, and neither did Adam. They both thought I was oblivious, and honestly, that worked to my advantage. But I wasn't just sitting around. I started gathering evidence. Bank statements showing suspicious transactions, photos of her car outside Adam's place, I'd driven by more than once, and even texts I managed to pull from her phone when she left it unattended. One night, while she was in the shower, I found the motherlode. Explicit messages between her and Adam. "Adam, last night was amazing. I can't stop thinking about you." "Megan, same. I wish I could spend every night with you instead of Eric." That was it. The confirmation I needed. The showdown. I decided the confrontation wasn't just going to be between Megan and me. It was going to involve Adam too. I wanted them both to squirm. On Saturday, I told Megan I had planned a date night for us. She looked surprised, but she agreed. What she didn't know was that I had also invited Adam. I told him I needed help setting up a surprise for Megan and asked him to meet us at our favorite restaurant. He bought the excuse without question. When we got there, Megan was already on edge. I could see it in her body language, the way her eyes darted around, like she was worried someone would recognize her. She didn't know what was coming, but her gut must have told her something was off. Adam arrived 10 minutes later, looking smug as ever. He gave me a bro-y clap on the shoulder before sliding into the booth across from us. Megan froze when she saw him, her face turning pale. "This is unexpected," she said, her voice shaky. I smiled, leaning back in my seat. "Yeah, I thought it'd be fun to have all three of us here. After all, we're such good friends. Right?" Adam shifted uncomfortably, but Megan tried to regain control. "Eric, what's this about?" "Oh, it's about honesty," I said, pulling out my phone. I placed it on the table and pressed play. It was an audio recording of their messages, the explicit ones I'd saved the night before. Megan's face turned bright red, and Adam's jaw dropped. "You've been spying on me?" Megan hissed, her eyes narrowing. "No," I said calmly. "I've been uncovering the truth. The truth about how my wife and my best friend decided to stab me in the back." Adam stammered, "Eric, man, I can explain." "Save it," I snapped. "You're not a man. You're a snake. And Megan, you're no better." Megan tried to fight back. "It wasn't like that, Eric. We didn't mean for this to happen." I laughed bitterly. "Oh, so you accidentally ended up in bed together? That's a new one." The restaurant was dead silent. Every head turned toward our table. I stood up, looking down at both of them. "I hope it was worth it," I said, "because you two just lost the one person who actually cared about either of you." And with that, I walked out, leaving them to deal with the humiliation they so richly deserved. But I wasn't done yet. My revenge was just getting started. Walking out of that restaurant was satisfying, but it was just the beginning. I wanted more than a confrontation, I wanted consequences. Megan came home later that night, looking like she'd been through a war zone. "Eric, we need to talk," she said, her voice trembling. "No, we don't," I said, keeping my tone icy. "We're done. Please, just let me explain," she pleaded, tears streaming down her face. "Explain what?" "How you betrayed me with my best friend. How you laughed behind my back." "Save it, Megan. I've heard enough." She tried every tactic in the book. Apologies, guilt trips, even blaming me. "You've been so distant lately, Eric." "I was lonely." "Lonely?" I snapped. "That's your excuse? You weren't lonely when you were sneaking out to see Adam. You weren't lonely when you lied to my face." Her tears didn't move me. "Pack your things," I said firmly. "You're leaving. Tomorrow." Her mouth opened, but no words came out. She realized I wasn't budging. Adam's reckoning. I wasn't going to let Adam off the hook either. The next day, I paid a visit to his office. I walked in cool as a cucumber, even though my heart was pounding. "Hey, Adam," I said when I found him in the break room. He looked up, startled. "Eric? Man, You're not my man," I said, cutting him off. "You're a backstabbing coward. And guess what? Your little secret isn't staying a secret anymore." He paled. "What are you talking about?" "Oh, just a little email I sent to your boss," I said, leaning in close. "With screenshots of your texts to my wife. You know, the ones where you talk about screwing her during lunch breaks. I figured HR might be interested in those." "You didn't," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I did. And here's the best part. They copied your wife on the email." Adam's face went ghost white. He opened his mouth to say something, but I didn't stick around to hear it. Megan's last attempt. When I got home, Megan was sitting on the couch, surrounded by half-packed suitcases. She looked defeated, her makeup smeared from crying. "I just need you to hear me out," she said softly. "Why?" I asked, crossing my arms. "So you can feed me more lies?" "No," she said, her voice breaking. "I messed up, Eric. I know that, but it didn't mean anything. It was a mistake, and I hate myself for it." I laughed bitterly. "A mistake? You don't accidentally screw someone, Megan. This wasn't a one-time thing. It was months of lying, sneaking around, and humiliating me. Don't act like you suddenly grew a conscience." She broke down completely, sobbing into her hands. "I've lost everything," she cried. "You didn't lose it," I said coldly. "You threw it away." I walked out of the room, leaving her to wallow in her self-pity. I didn't care how sorry she was. The damage was done and there was no going back. The dominoes fall. In the days that followed, the fallout from my revenge was glorious. Adam lost his job after HR confirmed his relationship with Megan violated company policy. His wife kicked him out and filed for divorce, and from what I heard, he was living with his parents. Megan, meanwhile, moved in with her sister. Word of the affair spread quickly, and she became the talk of our social circle. Friends who used to adore her started cutting ties, refusing to get caught up in the drama. As for me, I felt free for the first time in years. I filed for divorce, changed the locks on the house, and started focusing on myself. But I wasn't done yet. Megan and Adam had shattered my trust, and I wanted to make sure they felt the weight of their actions for a long time to come. My next move would make sure of that. With Adam's life crumbling and Megan out of the house, I finally had space to think clearly. I wasn't just satisfied with exposing their affair. I wanted to make sure they couldn't sweep it under the rug and move on as if nothing happened. The next phase of my plan involved a little creativity. I had collected plenty of evidence during my digging, screenshots of texts, photos of Megan's car outside Adam's place, and even some of the explicit messages they'd exchanged. I didn't want to humiliate myself in the process, but I wanted their betrayal to follow them wherever they went. The burn book. I created a detailed email with all the evidence attached and sent it anonymously to everyone in our social circle. Friends, acquaintances, and even a few people from their workplaces. I kept the tone straightforward. "Hi, I thought you should know the truth about Megan and Adam. They've been carrying on an affair for months, betraying their partners and the people who trusted them. Attached is the proof. Let them explain themselves if they can." I didn't sign it, but I didn't have to. The evidence spoke for itself. Within hours, my phone started blowing up with messages from shocked friends. "Is this real? What the hell, Eric? Are you okay? I can't believe they did this to you." And the best part? Megan and Adam couldn't deny a thing. The screenshots were damning, the timestamps indisputable. Megan's meltdown. The fallout was swift and brutal. Megan showed up at the house a few days later, pounding on the door like a lunatic. I opened it, leaning casually against the frame. "What do you want, Megan?" I asked coolly. "You destroyed my life," she screamed, her face twisted with rage. "Everyone hates me now. My friends won't even talk to me." "Maybe that's because you lied to them just like you lied to me," I said, smirking. "You had no right," she shouted. funny?" I said, crossing my arms. "I was thinking the same thing about you sleeping with my best friend. Guess we're even." Her voice cracked as she tried to defend herself. "It was a mistake, Eric. I didn't mean for it to go this far." "You didn't mean for it to go this far?" I repeated, shaking my head. "Megan, you didn't trip and fall into his bed. You made choice after choice to betray me. And now you're mad because people know who you really are? That's not my problem." She broke down, sobbing on the porch, but I didn't feel any sympathy. She had played stupid games, and now she was winning the stupid prizes. Adam's rock bottom. Adam's spiral was even more satisfying to watch. After losing his job and his wife, he tried to play the victim card, telling anyone who'd listen that I'd blown things out of proportion. Unfortunately for him, no one was buying it. The evidence I'd shared was airtight, and even his family was ashamed of him. I heard through the grapevine that he was crashing on a friend's couch, barely scraping by. The man who used to call himself my brother had been reduced to a punchline. Moving forward, with both Megan and Adam thoroughly exposed, I felt an overwhelming sense of closure. I wasn't bitter or angry anymore. I was free. Free to rebuild my life without the weight of their betrayal hanging over me. I started focusing on myself, hitting the gym, reconnecting with old friends, and even picking up some hobbies I'd abandoned during my marriage. Life was finally starting to feel like mine again. But the best part? I'd made sure that Megan and Adam would never forget what they'd done. Their reputations were in shambles, and their betrayal was public knowledge. They thought they could stab me in the back and get away with it. They were wrong. With Megan and Adam out of my life, I finally felt like I had room to breathe. The house was quieter, and for the first time in years, it felt like my home. No tension, no secrets, just peace. I channeled my energy into self-improvement. I started working out regularly, not just to look better but to feel better. I signed up for cooking classes, something I'd always wanted to do but never had time for, and rediscovered my love for photography. But the biggest change came when I decided to sell the house. There were too many memories tied to it, good ones that now felt tainted. Selling it felt like shedding old skin, leaving behind a version of myself that no longer existed. I moved into a smaller, modern apartment closer to downtown. It was perfect, a fresh start in every sense of the word. The unexpected apology. One day, a few months after I'd settled into my new place, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Eric," a familiar voice said. It was Adam. I almost hung up but decided to hear him out. "What do you want?" I asked coldly. I wanted to say I'm sorry," he said, his voice low. "I know that doesn't fix anything, but I needed you to know that I regret everything." "Regret getting caught, you mean?" I snapped. "No," he said quickly. "I regret hurting you. I was a terrible friend, and I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I needed to tell you that. I've been working on myself, and part of that is owning up to the damage I caused." I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to lay into him, to make him feel the pain he caused. But another part of me felt nothing. The anger, the bitterness, it was gone. "Thanks for saying that," I said finally. "But I've moved on, Adam. You should too." There was a long pause before he said, "I hope you're happy, Eric. You deserve it." I hung up, feeling surprisingly light. Maybe Adam's apology was genuine, or maybe it was just another act. Either way, it didn't matter. I'd already let go of the grudge. Megan's final plea. Not long after, Megan tried reaching out, too. She showed up at my apartment unannounced, looking haggard and desperate. "Eric," she said, her voice trembling. "Can we talk?" I stared at her for a moment before stepping outside and closing the door behind me. "What do you want, Megan?" "I've hit rock bottom," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I lost everything, my friends, my reputation, my job. I know I don't deserve it, but I'm begging you, please forgive me." Her words didn't move me. They felt hollow, like she was more upset about the consequences than the choices that led her there. "Megan," I said evenly, "I already forgave you. Not for you but for me. But forgiveness doesn't mean I want you in my life. You made your choices, and now you have to live with them. She looked crushed, but I didn't waver. Goodbye, Megan, I said, walking back inside and locking the door. That was the last time I saw her. Moving on. Life didn't change overnight, but day by day it got better. I started dating again, meeting people who appreciated me for who I was. I even met someone, a woman named Rachel, who made me believe in love again. Rachel was nothing like Megan. She was kind, honest, and supportive. Being with her felt easy, like I didn't have to prove myself or compete for her attention. One night, as we sat on the balcony of my apartment, watching the city lights, she asked me about my past. Do you hate them, Megan and Adam? She asked softly. I thought about it for a moment before shaking my head. No, I said. They taught me a lot. About trust, self-worth, and knowing when to walk away. If anything, I'm grateful. Because without them, I wouldn't be here with you. She smiled, resting her head on my shoulder. For the first time in years, I felt whole again. Rachel and I took things slow, but it quickly became clear that what we had was something real. Unlike Megan, she was open and honest, and being with her felt like a partnership, not a power struggle. She wasn't afraid to ask me hard questions, though. One night, over dinner, she brought up something that caught me off guard. Do you think you've fully moved on from what happened? She asked gently. I hesitated. I think so. I don't wake up angry anymore. I don't replay the betrayal in my head. But sometimes I wonder if it's left a scar. Rachel nodded, her hand resting on mine. Scars are okay. They mean you survived. But don't let them keep you from healing completely. Her words stuck with me. As much as I wanted to believe I was fully over it, I realized I still had work to do. Reflecting on the past. Over the next few weeks, I took time to reflect. Not on Megan and Adam, they didn't deserve more space in my head, but on myself. What had I ignored in that relationship? How had I let things get to the point where betrayal felt like a complete blindside? I realized I'd spent too much time excusing Megan's behavior. Her mood swings, her need for attention, her dismissive attitude. I'd convinced myself that it was just part of who she was, that love meant tolerating it. But love isn't about tolerating. It's about mutual respect, trust, and effort. Megan hadn't given me that, and for too long I didn't demand it. That realization was freeing. It wasn't about blaming myself for her actions. It was about understanding what I needed and deserved in a relationship moving forward. A surprising encounter. One afternoon, while running errands downtown, I bumped into Adam's wife, Emily. She looked happy, her smile genuine as she greeted me. Eric, wow, it's been a while, she said, balancing a shopping bag on her hip. Emily, hey? I said, surprised but glad to see her. You look great. Thanks, she said, her tone light. Divorce suits me. We both laughed, and for the first time, I realized how far we'd come since that mess. Emily told me she was dating someone new and thriving in her career. You know, she said, tilting her head. What happened was awful, but I think we're better off. Sometimes it takes something terrible to push you toward something better. I nodded, knowing exactly what she meant. I couldn't agree more. Looking forward, that encounter with Emily felt like the last piece of the puzzle. The chapter with Megan and Adam wasn't just closed, it was locked and sealed. Rachel and I started talking about the future, not in a rushed way, but with excitement. We planned trips, talked about moving in together, and even joked about adopting a dog. One evening, as we walked through the park, Rachel turned to me with a smile. Do you ever think about what you'd tell your past self? All the time, I admitted. I'd tell him to trust his gut, to stand up for himself sooner, and to not let betrayal break him. But most of all, I'd tell him that better days are ahead. She squeezed my hand. And I'd tell him he did okay, because here you are. In that moment, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude, not for the pain I'd endured, but for the strength it gave me to rebuild. Life isn't perfect, but it's real. And for the first time in a long time, it's mine. As life settled into its new normal, I found myself reflecting on how far I'd come. The pain Megan and Adam caused felt like a distant memory, more like a bad movie I'd watched than something I'd lived through. But there was one final moment of closure I didn't expect. One day, I got a message on Facebook from Megan's sister, Laura. "Hey, Eric, I know you and Megan don't talk anymore, but I thought you should know she's been going through a tough time. She's been saying she regrets everything. I'm not asking you to reach out, but I think she still cares about you in her own way." At first, I didn't know how to respond. Part of me wanted to ignore it. Megan had made her bed, and she was lying in it. But another part of me felt curious. Not because I wanted to reconnect, but because I wanted to understand. After some thought, I replied, "Thanks for letting me know, Laura. I hope Megan figures things out. I've moved on, and I hope she can too." I left it at that. It wasn't about rehashing the past or offering her forgiveness. It was about acknowledging that the story was truly over, building something new. Rachel and I continued to grow closer. Our lives began to intertwine naturally. Weekends spent exploring new places, late-night talks that stretched into the early hours, and a level of comfort I hadn't realized was possible in a relationship. One evening, as we were cooking dinner together, Rachel looked over at me and said, "You seem different lately, happier, more at peace." I thought about it and realized she was right. "I guess I finally feel like I'm living for myself," I said, "not for someone else's expectations or approval." She smiled. "That's the best kind of life to live." The surprising twist. Just when I thought the Megan and Adam saga was completely behind me, I got an unexpected email. It was from Adam. "Eric, I know I'm the last person you want to hear from, but I've been doing a lot of soul-searching. I've started therapy and am trying to fix the damage I've caused. Not just to you, but to everyone in my life. I'm not asking for anything, but I wanted to say thank you for calling me out. It forced me to face my mistakes. I hope you're doing well." I sat with the email for a while. Therapy? Soul-searching? It was hard to imagine the selfish, arrogant Adam I once knew taking responsibility for anything. But maybe he was capable of change. I didn't reply. Not because I was angry, but because I didn't need to. I didn't need closure from Adam or validation from Megan. I'd already found it within myself. Looking ahead, Rachel and I started making plans to move in together. It was a big step, but it felt right. On moving day, as we packed up my apartment, Rachel found an old photo album buried in a box. It was filled with pictures from my life before. Shots of Megan, Adam, and me during happier times. "What do you want to do with this?" she asked, holding it up. I looked at it for a moment before shaking my head. "Let's leave it behind." She smiled, tossing the album into the donate pile. As we unpacked in our new place that evening, I realized something important. Letting go isn't about forgetting. It's about choosing to focus on what matters. And for the first time, I knew exactly what mattered. My past didn't define me anymore. My future was what I made of it, and I was ready to make it extraordinary. The new apartment felt like a fresh start in every sense. It wasn't just a change of scenery. It was the start of a life I'd built for myself, free of the chaos that Megan and Adam had brought into it. Rachel and I settled in quickly. We divided the chores, decorated the space together, and spent evenings curled up on the couch, dreaming about what the future might hold. For the first time in years, I felt truly content. I didn't have to question her loyalty, second-guess her motives, or feel like I wasn't enough. With Rachel, everything just made sense. But life, as it tends to do, had one last surprise waiting for me. An unexpected encounter. One Saturday morning, Rachel and I decided to grab breakfast at a little cafe downtown. We were sitting on the patio, laughing about something stupid, when I heard a voice I hadn't expected to hear again. "Eric." I looked up and there she was, Megan. She looked different. Not worse, but not better either. She had a tiredness in her eyes that hadn't been there before, like life had worn her down. "Hi, Megan," I said, keeping my tone neutral. Rachel looked between us, sensing the tension but staying quiet. Megan hesitated for a moment before saying, "I didn't expect to see you here. You look happy." "I am," I said simply. She glanced at Rachel, then back at me. "I'm glad," she said softly. I wanted to say I'm sorry, again, for everything. I know it doesn't change anything, but I needed to say it. I nodded, not angry, not resentful. Thank you, Megan. I hope you're doing okay. She gave a small smile. I'm trying. Take care, Eric. And with that, she walked away. Closure in its truest form. Rachel reached across the table, taking my hand. You okay? She asked. I smiled at her, genuinely at peace. Yeah, I think I needed that. It wasn't dramatic or life-changing, but it was enough. Megan's apology didn't erase what happened, but it solidified what I already knew. I was free. Free from the past, free from the pain, and free to move forward. Moving forward. That encounter with Megan marked the end of a chapter I'd spent far too long living in. I no longer felt tied to the betrayal or the bitterness that came with it. Rachel and I began talking seriously about the future, buying a house, maybe even starting a family someday. The possibilities felt endless, and for the first time in a long time, I was excited about what was to come. Life had thrown me curveballs, but I'd come out stronger on the other side. And as I sat there with Rachel, laughing over coffee, I realized something important. The best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about living well, finding happiness, and refusing to let the people who hurt you control your life. Megan and Adam were part of my story, but they weren't the ending. They were just a stepping stone to something better, something real. Months turned into a year, and the life Rachel and I built together flourished. We bought a cozy house in the suburbs with a big backyard for the dog we'd been talking about for months. We named him Max, a goofy golden retriever who became the perfect addition to our new chapter. But more than the physical changes, it was the emotional growth that marked this new phase. I felt lighter, freer. The betrayals of the past were just that, past. Rachel and I attended a wedding for one of her close friends, and I realized something as we danced under twinkling lights. For the first time in years, I wasn't holding on to any anger or pain. I was just happy. A final twist. But life, as always, had one last unexpected card to play. One day, I got an email from an old mutual friend of mine and Adam's. The subject line read, "Have you seen this?" Curiosity got the better of me and I clicked it. The email contained a link to a local news article. Apparently, Adam had gotten into some legal trouble, embezzlement at his new job. He'd been caught skimming money off the books and was now facing charges. I forwarded the article to Rachel with a simple message, "Karma." She replied with a laughing emoji and texted, "You don't even need to lift a finger." And she was right. Life had a way of dealing with people like Adam. Looking back, later that night, as Rachel and I sat on the porch watching Max chase fireflies, she asked me, "Do you ever think about how it all started? Megan, Adam, everything?" I thought about it for a moment before shaking my head. "Not really," I said. "It's like remembering a movie you've outgrown. It happened, but it's not who I am anymore." She smiled and leaned against me. "I like who you are now." "Me too," I said, pulling her close. The lesson. If there's one thing I've learned through all of this, it's that life doesn't stop for heartbreak. Pushes you forward, whether you're ready or not. And sometimes what feels like the worst thing that's ever happened to you is just the beginning of something better. Megan and Adam's betrayal shattered me, but it also built me back up. It forced me to grow, to value myself, and to recognize what real love looks like. And now, with Rachel by my side, I'm living proof that you can come out of the storm stronger than ever. So to anyone out there struggling with betrayal or heartbreak, remember this. It's not the end of your story. It's just the start of a better one. You've got this. Here's to new beginnings. Life became something I never imagined. A mixture of stability and adventure, all wrapped up in a kind of love I'd once doubted was real. Rachel and I found joy in the little things. Sunday morning pancakes, spontaneous weekend trips, and lazy evenings with Max sprawled on the couch between us. But the best moment of this new chapter came one sunny afternoon when Rachel and I were unpacking groceries. She hesitated, holding a small paper bag in her hand. "What's that?" I asked, curious. She gave me a nervous smile and handed it to me. Inside was a tiny pair of baby booties. For a moment I didn't understand. Then it hit me. Wait, are you? I asked, my voice trailing off in disbelief. She nodded, her eyes shining with tears. We're having a baby, Eric. I was speechless. All the pain, the betrayal, and the heartache I'd endured seemed so far away in that moment. I pulled her into a hug, feeling like the luckiest man alive. Full circle. As we prepared for this new adventure, I found myself reflecting on the journey that brought me here. There were times when I thought I'd never recover, times when the betrayal felt like it had destroyed me. But standing in our cozy kitchen with Rachel, Max wagging his tail at our feet, and the promise of a new life on the way, I realized how far I'd come. Megan and Adam's actions no longer haunted me. In fact, I hardly thought about them at all. They were just a distant chapter in a story that had grown so much richer and fuller since. Advice for the broken-hearted. To anyone out there reading this who feels like their world is falling apart, I want you to know, it gets better. Yes, betrayal hurts like hell. It shakes your trust and makes you question everything. But it doesn't have to define you. You're stronger than you realize, and if you keep moving forward, you'll find something better, something real. Rachel and I are proof of that. The future. As we get ready to welcome our child into the world, I'm filled with hope and gratitude. This is the legacy I want to leave behind. A life built on trust, love, and resilience. Betrayal might have been the spark that set my old life on fire, but it also cleared the way for something far more beautiful to grow. And for that, I'm thankful. Thank you for staying with me. This crazy journey is finally over and I'm ready for what's next. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any more interesting stories. And leave a comment with what you would do in this situation. See you in the next videos.